Hey guys, so I wanted to share a little bit about the meta Orphea build. Orphea has had a lot of builds that have been meta for a long time. E-build was very popular until they nerfed it. It was popular in the competitive scene anyways. But ever since she got those buffs, I said that the builds were kind of up in the air at the moment, and I wanted to wait until we saw some competitive play with Orphea. Well, it's time that we've actually started to see some competitive play with Orphea, particularly in higher levels of NGS as well as Method Madness. We've been seeing a lot of Orphea in one particular build, so I wanted to break down this competitive build. I decided to play it in a game. This is just a casual game with a few friends, so nothing too crazy out of this one. But I just wanted to talk about the build and why it's used, and explain how you guys can use it to move up in rank. So the basic idea of the build is a trait build. You want to get as many stacks of your trait as possible and abuse the fact that you have such high trait stacks. It's a reliable build in the sense that a lot of her Q build, if you miss even a single Q, you lose so much of your damage that you just struggle. But in this particular trait build, even if you miss your Q, you're not just out for the count. So it's a much more consistent build than Q build. As far as the E build goes, generally the E build was really good if your team was good at setting up for your team. And if your team is good for setting up for you, and then you can blow up afterwards, the E build's always good. But this build is actually pretty decent even in that situation. So best case scenario, it's good enough. And in worst case scenario, it's way better than her other builds. So that's the best part about it, is that if things are going your way, you're likely still going to win these fights. And if things aren't going your way, this build's going to be much better than the other builds in that particular case, which is awesome. So it's a consistent build, and it's a build you don't necessarily need to make plays. She's also kind of interesting in the solo lane because you can actually deal with people pretty well. And to the point where in this particular game, I remember in comms, they were like, do you need help up there? And I was like, nah, I'll just take them all down, right? I'll fight 3 people up here. And then there ends up being 3 people up here at a point. And I'm like, I got this. Like, I'm going to take them all. And it's just kind of fun. It's a very fun build. Orphea in general is one of my favorite heroes to play as far as just like, if you just want to have fun. I'm not good enough with her to play her in like a lot of competitive environments, just because I generally get shoved into like tank or support in competitive environments. Because I also usually shot call, so I want to be playing something that's a little bit easier for me to shot call. And so I don't get to play her too much in that, but I do really enjoy her. I think her playstyle is very fun. So let's talk about the build a little bit, and let's break down the pieces, and I'm going to talk about the playstyle. In the early game, the playstyle is pretty much just get a couple abilities, get an auto attack. Get a couple abilities, get an auto attack. Level 1, we're taking Ancestral Strength. So the basic idea of Ancestral Strength, non-heroic abilities deal 20% more damage to CC'd enemies. Stunned, rooted, silenced, or slowed. Enemy heroes hit with this are slowed. Any enemy heroes hit with your auto attack after you hit an ability, that Overwhelming Chaos, get slowed by 20%. So this also combos in itself a little bit. If you land a Q and then you auto attack, now your E and your W are going to do more damage. If you land an E, then your Q and your W are going to do more damage, and then you're going to auto attack and slow, allowing you to land another Q. And it just kind of synergizes like that for just about everything. But in general, in the competitive environment, you're likely, or at least with an average team comp, you're likely to be fighting things that are already slowed, stunned, etc. Level 4, you're going to be taking Chaotic Assault. Now, me personally, I don't actually think this talent's very good on its own, and if you're not going the full build, I really don't recommend you take this talent. In fact, for the longest time, I was still recommending Backbiter Allegrissimo, particularly Backbiter, because you could pretty much never die if you went Backbiter, because anytime that someone jumped on you, you press W and you'd be out. You can always press Q to get back in, and that extra 15 health means that you never got bursted. So I don't recommend Chaotic Assault unless you're going to be going this full build. This requires you to have 3 stacks, and if you have 3 stacks, you do 75% bonus damage. So normally, you do 50% increased damage per stack, up to 150% more damage. Well, now it goes up to 225% more damage, which is more than triple your normal auto attack damage. Don't forget, you also heal for 100% of the damage dealt. So you can heal for that huge amount. This makes this a very sustained build, which again is great, because if everything's going your way, you have enough damage to burst just about anyone. And if things aren't going your way, then this build is great for these sustained fights. On level 7, you take Insatiable. And I know there's been variations of this where people take Ravenous Hunger, variations where people take Mind Devour. The reason that you go Insatiable is purely because it synergizes so well with your level 13 talent, and I'll talk about it when I start talking about the level 13 talents. So right here, I immediately go to channel because I just want to make sure that we're not wasting too much time. I get a little bit out of position, so I decide to go towards their backline. Instantly heal for a huge portion of my health with my auto attack. And then I get to 3 stacks. I do 500 damage and heal myself for 500, well, 489. And quickly drop them, and I'm almost back to full health. I can then land a Q to continue positioning forward, but I don't really want to chase because they're so close to their safe area, so close to their structures, so I go back in and I start hitting Mei once again. So Insatiable allows for really high DPS, but the real reason why you take Insatiable in this build is because at level 13, you're going to be taking Abyssal Symbiosis. And what that means is when you hit a hero with Chomp, you grant full Chaos, maximum Chaos, which synergizes really well with Chaotic Assault because you're going to be doing a ton of damage with it. So every 1.5 seconds, you are going to be getting a huge heal and a huge amount of burst damage twice, pretty much. And it also gives you a shield. So now you can survive that burst that you were lacking in the earlier levels, but you also gain much more from it, which is really, really powerful. And that's why you take Insatiable, so that you can have a 1.5 second cooldown on Chomp, and every 1.5 seconds you're going to be critting for, 500 damage, healing yourself for 500, and granting yourself a shield for 256. And the shield lasts longer than the cooldown of your W. Like, that's how good this is. I take Crushing Jaws most times. There are definitely times where you want to go Feast. I take Crushing Jaws most times because I really like the combos with it. So you'll see there are a lot of times that I'll do combos and I catch people out of position, but I really like them. And you'll see that I generally take a flanking position when I do a combo. So I'm not using like an ult here because they can just walk away, right? Because it always has to be perpendicular to where you are. Or so it's going to be like this. So instead, watch my positioning. Watch where I go. It might not be here. This game happened a couple days ago, so I don't actually remember completely if this was here or if it was later in the game. I thought it was here, though. Okay, so watch my positioning. Remember, it's always perpendicular. So what ends up happening here is what I'm doing. Excuse that, I was coaching Deckard earlier. So if I were to stand here and use my ult, it would just cover this area, which means it's very easy for the enemies to just step out and not get hit by it. However, if I position over here, that means... If I position over here, that means that my ult can cover this entire area, which means they can't step out this direction, and there's not enough time for them to step in this direction or in this direction. So I like to put these in flanking positions like this because it's so much more impactful, because it's so difficult to deal with. You just don't even know what you're doing to be able to answer that. So that's what I really like about that. So right here, once again, watch Jaina's health. Boom! Jane is gone. And I comboed off of my own abilities, and I set up a position that she can't get out of. So at the end of the day, it was just much more powerful to do that than do anything else. And so we ended up winning this objective, and I haven't even hit my major power spike, which is 13. But we're getting there. We're getting there. So to finish off the rest of the build, because I don't think I actually hit level 20 in this game, on level 16, you're going to be taking Dead Magic. Basic attacks consume Chaos, ignore armor, and deal 146 spell damage to the target and all enemies around them. You're just going to be consuming a lot of Chaos. And now the downside about this is it's one of those talents that it doesn't get much stronger with the build. It's just something that you're already going to be focusing on getting a lot of auto attacks, so it's a good talent. But you could certainly go with Bond of Anguish if you really needed to, because you don't need to go full Q build to get value out of this. If they have enough health that this feels like a good talent, feel free to go this talent. Dead magic is okay, but in general, it's not like that great. The benefit is that it just adds more hybrid damage, and against tanks that have armor, it's really good. So, like for example, this game, if Mei were to take this talent, Skating Ice, she gains 50 physical armor for 3 seconds. Well, that's going to cut the damage that I do with Overflowing Chaos down to half. So taking Dead Magic allows it to where that no longer is the case, which would make this a very good talent. But if you're going against a team that doesn't run a lot of armor, this loses a lot of value, and it might be better to go with Bond of Anguish instead. It really depends on the team that you're going against and what your goal is, if you're going to be taking down the tanks, or if that you just want that extra 152 damage. Level 20, again, this is also up to you. And again, like, this is the burst. Like, best case scenario, if your team does land the correct burst, or the correct, like, taunt into whatever, you still have enough burst to finish people off. But yeah, level 20, you can go with really anything. Consuming Chaos granting you spell power, though, is definitely my favorite for long, drawn-out fights, and Engulfing Oblivion is my favorite for short fights. Reducing their armor allows it to where you can burst people just a little bit better, and at the same time, it's just a strong talent. But you're going to be building up so much Chaos that keeping this 30% bonus spell damage, or spell power, is relatively easy. Sorry, I'm like, it's been a long day, I'll just say that. And I've been talking all day doing other stuff, as you can see with my drawings. So I would say you're looking at one of these two talents. Long drawn out fights, Eldritch Conduit pretty much guarantees you're going to win that fight. But if fights are happening fast, Engulfing Oblivion and a little bit of practice on the positioning is all you need to close out this game. This particular one, I decided to... I didn't think we really had enough, but to be honest, it's kind of my fault. I wasn't listening to the shot caller. I was letting someone else shot call for this game, and I didn't listen to them, so my team dying is on me, unfortunately. If you ever are the shot caller and another person is put in charge of shot calling, you need to be willing to let them take over. And you have to listen, because if you don't listen, then they don't learn what is a good shot call and what isn't a good shot call, because they can always blame a bad shot call on the fact that your team didn't follow up. So where my team died there, whether or not I thought it was a good call, we won't ever learn whether or not it was a good call if I didn't go. Because if I went and it worked, then we'd learn that it works. If I went and it didn't work, we'd learn that it doesn't work. But if I don't go and it doesn't work, then we don't know if it would have worked or not, because I wasn't there to find out. So it's the same thing. If you're ever on a team and your shot caller makes a bad call, you still want to follow it so that your shot caller can learn what a good call and what a bad call is, rather than just being able to blame it on team not following. End of that story anyways. But yeah, I should have followed. At the end of the day, I should have followed. I just wanted soak. I was like, we can get 16s. We're going to fast forward just a teeny bit. Yeah, so you can see I took Dead Magic purely because of what the Mei took. Also, we didn't really need to worry too much about health. Right here, I get rolled. I just got a little too carried away trying to kill the Artanis, and just wasn't paying attention. So, again, 100% my fault. A little bit of practice with Orphea on her mobility would also help out a little bit, but that's more of just a major mistake that you can make on any hero. I can't really blame it on my Orphea familiarity. Yeah, my auto attack does a lot of damage now. 500 damage plus 185 damage. I mean, you can really chunk people. And these are the fights that I love, where I can just chomp and then hit him with a crit and then use a Q and then just chomp again and then crit. I mean, it just has so much damage. It's seriously so much damage. Like, the perfect world, you chomp, crit, Q or EQ, crit, chomp, crit, and like, that's so much damage. Like, something's guaranteed to die there. So we head down here, we grab a boss, I clear out one more wave because I kind of want that lane to be pushing so that if they come to boss, they lose soak. And your wave clear is so fast. So in the early portions of the game on Orphea, you have great wave clear. Your cam clear is not great. It's okay. It's okay, but it's not great. So I don't really worry about camps. I usually double soak or hold the lane. And then once we're done with like the double soaking or holding the lane, team fights, you want to follow up whatever your team does, but after that, you actually take really good long drawn out fights. Like you are one of the better like sustained mages in the game, and you're so mobile that it's hard to deal with. So you definitely want to be using that mobility to your advantage whenever you can. Things that synergize well with Orphea, it's just CCs, really. If people are standing still, then her whole combo just works so much better. Things that are good against Orphea is mobility. If there are two major things, roots and mobility. If you can root an Orphea, she can't get away, and all of her mobility is kind of wasted. And then mobility. If you can dodge her W and her Q, she loses like so much of her cooldowns. So right here, I just full combo. Full combo pretty much wipes teams. But remember, you have to do it kind of from a flank, right? And I've talked about it with Orphea. She has a 100-0 combo, so you definitely want to learn it if you're going to be playing a lot of Orphea. And that's using your E and your R. Your R will pull them into your E, and then you Q to get close to them, and you use your W to chomp them. And then you do an auto attack, which does crit damage, and you can 100-0 just about anyone. But you need to make sure that you do it at a flank, or else they're just going to walk out of your ult and that whole combo is wasted. But if you can get good at that, you can pretty much just dominate. And that's where we're at with Orphea. I mean, I didn't get a lot of teamfight action. I mean, the fights ended rather slowly, so I wasn't really expecting to top the damage charts, but I certainly got a lot of kills and got a lot of work done. Same thing with like soak. I could have been double soaking more, but I had 2 to 3 people in my lane, so I decided I'm just going to stay in this lane a little bit longer. This is the Orphea trait build, and it is the current meta build for Orphea. It is extremely strong. I highly recommend playing it because it's very consistent. You do really, really well with it. Whether you're like winning or losing, whether you miss an ability or not, it just seems to work out really well. It's got high survivability, high sustain damage, and just enough burst damage to get by. So I definitely recommend trying it out if you guys haven't, and let me know, what do you guys think about this build? Finally, thank you guys so much for watching, and feel free to check out any of my other videos.